Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365. I'm your host as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we're back again, this time for International Fight Week to break down UFC 239 from Vegas. John, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. As you say, it's International Fight Week, one of the biggest cards of the year. Got a stacked lineup. But first and foremost, before we get into breaking down the fights themselves, I have to ask you the question for us UK guys. Has it put a slight dampener on it, the fact that they're moving this card to pay-per-view over here in the UK?
Well, yeah, I think that there's a lot of strong opinions on it from the public, and I agree with every single one of them. You know, obviously, us over here in the UK, we've got to pay for BT Sports, which is a subscription in itself, anywhere between sort of £30 and £45 a month, and then they're wanting to put a £20 pay-per-view on top of it, and then if you want to watch the early prelims and the prelims as well, that's, you know, £6 a month for Fight Pass. So it does all add up. However, I'm gonna be one of the ones that does buy the pay-per-view. You know, I'm not gonna miss
How could you miss this card?
Yeah, I don't want to miss it, and to be honest with you, when it comes to streams and stuff like that, I just don't trust them holding out during the bigger fights. So
yeah,
for the sake of £20, I'm gonna succumb to it, but it is what it is, man. But before we start, I just want to mention MMA Play 365. MMA Play 365 is a brand new betting advice platform that is now officially launched. We have a solid team behind the platform, which we believe is unique and provides subscribers with so much content. The subscription-based platform is one that is absolutely affordable to everybody. Our launch offer is also amazing. So the first 1,000 subscribers will get their first full year at $198, which is only $16.50 per month. So whether you're a serious long-term gambler or just a huge fan of MMA that likes to bet for fun on the night, MMA Play 365 is absolutely for you. You can head over to MMAplay365.com to subscribe now. So with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC 239, and we enter the Showtime Fights. The first Showtime fight tonight is in the main event of the evening. We get to see arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time step back in the cage once again to defend his light heavyweight title. We've got Jon Bones Jones versus Thiago Santos. John, who have you got?
Yeah, great fight. Was it going to be any other fight to open the Showtime Fights? I don't think so. We've got, like you say, arguably the greatest of all time, Jon Bones Jones, returning against the very dangerous Thiago Santos. Now, for me, it's got to the stage now with Jon Jones where he's beaten all the... I don't want to sound disrespectful to Thiago Santos when I say that the technically best fighters that he could come up against, because Thiago Santos is the technical guy. He throws some technical, crazy technical shit. But yeah, he's the technical guy. But when I talk about technical, I'm meaning like the guys like your Daniel Cormier's, your Alexander Gustafsson's, the guys who you really look at and think these are the guys, technique for technique, could be the ones to dethrone Jon Jones. They haven't been. So now the last couple of fights I felt with Anthony Smith in his last fight, and then Thiago Santos in this fight, he's getting to the more dangerous opponents, the ones who've got that kind of one-shot knockout power, those guys who probably every single area and every single aspect of the fight, Jon Jones is, well, technically better, because he's technically better than pretty much everyone in every aspect. But I think he is technically better than Thiago Santos in every aspect of mixed martial arts. But Santos is that guy. He kind of reminds me slightly of back in the day, Matt Serra against GSP. GSP technically is a better fighter. He's a sounder fighter everywhere. But Serra's a dangerous guy. He had that one-punch knockout power, and he wobbled GSP and put him away. And I kind of feel like Santos and as I said, Smith in the fight beforehand are those kind of guys, those guys that you want to come out there and just not try and go technique for technique with Jon Jones, because I think that's what Anthony Smith did. I think Anthony Smith kind of lost a bit of his identity from his previous few fights in that Jon Jones fight, because he tried to kind of play technique for technique. He didn't bull rush Jones or anything like that. He didn't really press him up against the fence and throw wild bombs in, wild flurries, anything like that. And I think that's what the fans were hoping and expecting to see from Anthony Smith in that Jon Jones fight, because, as I say, technique for technique wise, you're not going to beat him. And that was a really weird fight, actually. I watched it at the time, and I commented on Twitter about it being a bit of a weird fight. And I watched it again, obviously the build up to this podcast, and I still stand by that. It was a bit of a weird fight. It kind of felt like Jones didn't really get out of second gear at any point. And it also kind of felt like Anthony Smith didn't want to throw everything at John Jones. He didn't want to be finished. He looked like he was just sort of happy to cruise to a decision loss, which was kind of weird. And I got that vibe on the night as well. It was just kind of, I don't want to say an anticlimax, but I just found it quite strange how the fight played out and how it didn't play out the way that I thought it would at all, especially from Anthony Smith's side. But going into this fight, I'm really excited. I'm more excited for this fight than I am the Anthony Smith fight, because I think Thiago Santos is a far more dangerous fighter than Anthony Smith is, and he has the potential to mix things up massively. I mean, we've seen it over his last few fights, especially his the Jan Blachowicz fight in the last fight. Well, a lot of people think Santos is just going to come out absolutely wild like we saw against Jimmy Manuwa, and crazy like the Eric Anders fight. And there was all these fights I can name. Kevin Holland as well. That was a wild fight with loads of crazy scrambles and things. But the Blachowicz fight, Santos played it a bit differently. He played it a bit more technical. He didn't. He was a 5-round main event, so he didn't throw everything at Blachowicz early on, and he kind of went with a more measured approach. He was he was working behind a jab, working behind those leg kicks, and he did have the flurries where he attacked Blachowicz like we've seen before, like the Manuwa fight. But he didn't get drawn into a slugfest, and I think he fought very smartly, but also didn't. No point are you out of danger when you're against Santos, so he can kind of sit back in those moments and conserve his energy a bit and fight like that. But I think in this fight, if he wants to defeat John Jones, he's going to have to go back to the Santos that we saw against the likes of Jimmy Manuwa, and if it means the gas tank's empty after round 3 and you get finished in the later rounds, I think that's how he'll have to play it in order to win. Because like I mentioned, I keep going back to this Anthony Smith-John Jones fight, but I think if he tries to go technique for technique, I just think Jones is going to pick him apart. I mean, Jones has got the jab. Jones is so good with distance control, distance management, keeping you at bay, whether it's with the front kick, the oblique kicks to the legs, the long eye pokes that we know that he likes to use. He'll manage that distance, and he'll make sure he's out of harm's way. He did it really well against Gustafsson in their second fight as well. Obviously, we know how good Gustafsson is with his boxing. But yeah, I just think if Maheta tries to play it technically sound, I think he could. It just could end up the way that the Jones and Smith fight did. I think John Jones will be able to take Santos down at points, hold him down, wear him out on the ground there, and then that explosiveness goes. I know. As I mentioned, that last Santos fight against Blachowicz, he got the knockout in round 3 because he played it sensibly and he still had that power at the start of the round. But I think if he tries to play it too steady and too safe with Jones, I think John Jones will take him down and wear him out on the mat and beat him up there. But ultimately, I can't look past this being Santos' only key to victory and path to victory is that ridiculous one-punch knockout power. And I don't want to say it'll be a lucky punch if he gets it, because obviously we know that's what Santos is all about. But yeah, I think, as I mentioned at the very start of the breakdown, I think John Jones technically all round is a better fighter and will dominate the fight everywhere, unless Santos does hit him with something, rock him, and can flurry for the finish. But I've got to go with John Jones for this fight. I'm going to pick him to get the win. I think he's going to. I don't know whether it's going to play out to like the Smith fight, and he's just going to cruise to a decision, or whether later on in the fight, I think Santos will throw a bit more caution to the wind and tire, and I think Jones will be able to finish Santos via submission later in the fight. So I'm going with John Jones to win this fight via submission in round 4.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this, but listen, first and foremost, I'm not a John Jones hater. Sure, I disagree with most of the bad stuff that is done outside of the cage, but I'm not here to talk about that. Inside the cage, I think John Jones is the best fighter to ever step inside a mixed martial arts cage. I do think he's the greatest fighter of all time.
Bar Artem Lobov.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I do genuinely I am a fan of Jon Jones as a fighter and as a mixed martial artist. I think he's achieved some phenomenal things. But listen, all great fighters come to an end at some point, and I'm not saying this is the end of Jon Jones, but I do feel that he's declining. And some people question that, and some people have had this chat with me on Twitter already about why I feel that way. And look, anybody that knows me and has listened to the podcast and has talked to me before, no matter what my opinions are, whether sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but I will always give reasonable information to go along with my decision and ultimately where I'm going to go. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I think people have now got the hint that I am picking Maheta to win the fight. But like I've just touched upon briefly, I think Jon Jones is in a decline. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So you go back and you look at his last 4 fights, okay? So over in St. Preux in 2016, yes, he came back off a layoff, but, he went 5 rounds with St. Preux. He didn't look the same fighter. He didn't look dangerous. Some people you can make that argument, okay, was there a bit of ring rust there? And is that why he wasn't the same Jon Jones as what we expected him to be? Then you look at the Daniel Cormier fight, the second time he fought Cormier. That's obviously now a no contest, but he won that fight at the time. Daniel Cormier was winning that fight. He was winning the entire fight until that head kick landed. Yes, it was a close fight, but Daniel Cormier was doing well. He was winning the round. He got caught by a head kick. Then you look at Gustafsson, it was a close fight, close first round, close second round. There wasn't a great deal in it. Jones eventually got the finish in the third round. Now, with that Gustafsson win, we all thought, okay, Jones has got the finish in the third round. He's done well, and he's finally put out a guy that he went to war with. So you're thinking, okay, maybe Jon Jones is back. It wasn't the most sparkling performance on the feet, but he managed to finish Gustafsson, something that not many fighters have been able to do. But then you look at where Gustafsson is now. Subsequently, he's retired only 1 fight later, and he looks like he was a shell of himself for at least a couple of fights. So you're now looking back at that Gustafsson win, and you're thinking, well, how dominant was that? How great was that win if Gustafsson was on a huge decline to the point where he's now retired? And then the Anthony Smith fight. Now, Anthony Smith, credit to him, he's built himself up. He got himself a title shot. He's racking wins together when people are counting him out, and I respect that a lot. But compared to Jones's previous opposition, what he's fought, back in the day with your Machidas and your Shoguns, he's not. Are you going to talk about Anthony Smith on the level of those fighters that I've just mentioned? Absolutely not. He should have been getting Anthony Smith out there, and ultimately he couldn't. He nearly did at times, but to me, this isn't the same Jon Jones as we've seen previously. This isn't the same Jon Jones that knocked out Shogun. This isn't the same Jon Jones that submitted Rampage, that submitted Machida, that submitted TRT Belfort, that went to war with Alexander Gustafsson. This isn't the same Jon Jones that unanimously defeated an unbeaten, never lost a round Daniel Cormier. This isn't the same guy. So when I say decline, what I don't mean is he's shot. He's definitely not shot, but he's not the same fighter that we all remember from 4 or 5 years ago. And this happens in mixed martial arts. Great fighters fall eventually. Just some names to quickly pick out: Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, Fedor Verdum, Mighty Mouse Cejudo, Aldo McGregor, Cruz Cody, Joanna and Rose, even Woodley and Usman. And I know people are going to laugh, but even Rousey and Holly Holm, all those fighters, everybody was expecting to wipe everybody out every fight, but ultimately the great fighters come down at some point. So I don't think anybody can really sit here and say that Jon Jones cannot lose to Maheta Santos, because Jon Jones is going to lose a fight at some point, and personally I think it comes within the next 3 fights. So it may or not be this Maheta Santos fight. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy fight for Santos. I'll explain why I think he's going to win in a minute, but I think Jon Jones is going to lose within his next 3 fights. And when I look at the style versus style of these guys, yes, Maheta can't go toe-to-toe, technique versus technique with Jon Jones, because he's not as technical as a fighter. He isn't as great as a wrestler. His strikes aren't as clean and crisp and as quick. But, man, like you've already mentioned, John, Jones has gone toe-to-toe technically with better guys than Maheta Santos, so he's proved that he can do that against that style at that level. But Maheta Santos is a different style, and I think if any style can beat Jon Jones. It's the style that Maheta possesses, a guy that can bull rush you, a guy that's got power in his hands. And, you know, we forget about his kicks because he keeps knocking people out with his fist, but the dude's got brutal kicks, legs, body, head. Man, I'm telling you right now, this is not an easy fight for Jon Jones. Jon Jones can do one thing. He can do one thing that makes this an easy fight, and that's if he level changes and takes Maheta down and controls him on top. Ground and pound, submits him, whatever. That's the one area where Jon Jones can make this an easy fight. If he doesn't level change, or if Thiago Santos's takedown defense, which actually isn't that bad by the way, holds up in this fight, I'm telling you, this is not an easy fight for Jones. And Thiago Santos can go, 3-4 rounds at least. We saw that against Eric Anders at this weight, maybe at middleweight with the heavy cut, maybe not. But at light heavyweight, I truly believe that he's got decent cardio as well. And like I say, the power in the hands and the feet, if he comes at Jones doesn't like it when fighters get in his face, when in the pocket boxing and the pushing Jon Jones back. That combination of two, Jones is really in an uncomfortable position, and that's probably the only position in mixed martial arts that Jones really does look that uncomfortable. But Thiago Santos can exploit all these areas that I think is going to make Jon Jones uncomfortable. Like I say, I believe Jon Jones loses in his next 3 fights. I just feel that, like I've mentioned already, he's nowhere near the fighter that he used to be. I don't know how many times people can make excuses for his performances before we just throw our hands up and admit that he isn't that same guy. He is on a decline, and I think the style of Thiago Santos is absolutely something that can beat the style of Jon Jones, and probably the only style right now that beats Jones. He's fought wrestlers, he's fought the technical fighters. Let's see how he handles a bull rush from Thiago Santos, who's throwing hell at him in his hands and his feet and trying to break him down from his legs, because that's another thing as well. If Thiago Santos comes out with a heavy leg kick game, the long legs of Jon Jones, if they start getting eaten up, slows Jones down, alters his movement, suddenly Jones is in a position where he's not used to being. I'm telling you, these are all elements that could come into this fight. It's not going to be an easy fight for Santos, because if Jones can keep at range, if he can keep distance, if he can pick at him, exit, angle, move, he's quick, he's sharp, he's on point, he uses his wrestling, then this is where Jon Jones is really going to flourish in the fight. But ultimately, I think Thiago Santos can cut the corners, can cut angles. I think he can pressure Jones. And I'm telling you now, if Thiago Santos lands a shot early on Jones and doesn't knock him out, it's going to worry Jones a lot. May cause him to shoot a takedown and ultimately get him the win. But like I say, it's not an easy fight, but I think it's a much closer fight than people are making out. I think it's a much closer fight than the betting line suggests. I'm going to take Thiago Maheta Santos to shock the world. I'm going to take him to knock Jon Jones out. Now in your next Showtime fight, in your co-main event of the evening, the Women's Bantamweight Championship fight, we've got Amanda Nunes defending a title against Holly Holm. John, who have you got?
Yeah, for me in this fight, we've got, again, arguably the women's greatest of all time in Amanda Nunes taking on Holly Holm, who once again is getting a shot at the title. And this for me is an interesting fight as well, because initially my first thoughts were, yeah, Amanda Nunes going to take this one comfortably. But when you look into it in a bit more detail, this is the kind of fight that Amanda Nunes doesn't really like, and Holly Holm's got the kind of style that kind of works well against Amanda Nunes. We've seen that in the fights that Amanda Nunes had with Valentina Shevchenko. Obviously, she defeated her twice, but the last one back at UFC 215 in 2017. That was a really close fight, and a lot of people argue that Valentina Shevchenko won that fight, and I actually was one of those people at the time who thought Shevchenko had done enough to edge it. And the way to beat her is to make sure you get out of that first round first and foremost. Avoid the heavy shots. Avoid the power, avoid the pressure, and that's the kind of thing that Holly Holm does well. She's a really good counter striker. She's quick. She'll dart in and out. She's more of a points fighter. Obviously, she does have the ability to knock you out. more often than not with those legs, the head kick of Ronda Rousey and it's similar to the in the Blachowicz fight that spring to mind. But more often than not, if she wins a fight, she's going to win via decision by outpointing you, by using that nice range, that in and out karate style to rack up the points and kind of get you chasing shadows. But yeah, she does have the potential to drag this out, I think, into the later rounds of the fights, to possibly even drag this out into a decision. And I saw an interesting stat actually on Twitter the other day that I wasn't aware of until I saw it, that Amanda Nunes, whenever her opponents have taken her out of the first round, I believe it was, she's actually 3-3, if I recall, or something along those lines. And I haven't actually checked up on it. I'll have to look. But if that is the case, then it'll be really interesting. But yeah, for me, it is going to be an Amanda Nunes victory, and this is why I think she has the ability to close the distance on Holly Holm and push her against the fence and cause her problems and land shots and hurt her. Holly Holm is hard to knock out and to get out of there. We've seen that in the Cyborg fight as well. She can take a shot, but yeah, when Nunes is landing on you over and over again, I think she'll be even more cautious pulling the trigger than she usually is with that counter-striking style. On top of that, Valentina Shevchenko had a massive I think has a massive speed advantage. Obviously, the size of the two fighters plays into consideration with that, but she has a massive speed advantage over Holly Holm, and I think that's why Shevchenko caused so many problems for Amanda Nunes in their fight. But I don't think that Holly Holm now, the Holly Holm that we see now at 37 years of age, I don't think she's as quick, anywhere near as quick as Shevchenko was in that fight with Nunes. So I think that Nunes will be able to catch her. I think she will be able to land shots on her. I am actually taking this fight to go the distance. I think it's going to go to a decision. I think Holly Holm is tough. I think she can take a shot, like I mentioned. But over the course of the 5 rounds, I do think Amanda Nunes is going to land shots on her. I think it's going to play out very similarly to the Cyborg fight, actually. I think Amanda Nunes will just rack up the score with those powerful shots, with those heavy bombs. Holm may have moments where she lands a nice few counter flurries and things like that, or she might steal a round here or there. But over the course of the fight, I think that Nunes will have more than enough to defeat Holly Holm. As I say, I think it's going to go to a decision. I don't think Amanda Nunes is going to get her out of there unless it's very early in the fight. But I'm going with Holm to be able to weather the early storm. But Nunes is just going to pressure her for the entirety of the 5 rounds, land shots, and take that unanimous decision.
Yeah, I'm taking the champ Nunes as well, but I disagree on the method of victory. I think that she's going to get her out of there. Man, women do not like being punched by Amanda Nunes at all. Like, I genuinely, they don't look like when you see someone like Cyborg start teeing off on somebody, they look insane. They look crazily powerful. Amanda Nunes's don't, but man, like I've just mentioned, women do not like it. They drop, they get knocked out, and I can't imagine the power and the ferociousness that she's got in her hands, and that's testament to her, because she's such a good grappler and she's got such a good submission game as well. She's super well rounded. She's so hard to beat. She's aggressive. She cuts angles well. She really puts her opponents in all kinds of difficult positions. You've got Holly Holm. She's 37 now. She's had a reasonably long career, 16 fights, but she's fought at the top level for so long now against some of the best women out there. And you just wonder, like I say, at 37 years old, what she's got left. And even when you look at a record, her last 2 wins have come against Megan Anderson, which Megan's, I think she was overhyped. She's not the fighter that some people thought that she was. And Blachowicz in the last 6 fights, those are only 2 wins. Megan Anderson, Blachowicz. Yes, she's lost to Cyborg, Jermaine D. Randami, Valentina, Miesha Tate, but man, like, at this level, she just seems to be losing the fights against the women that are better than her at the time. And Amanda Nunes is exactly that. Yes, Holly Holm's got a striking background. Yes, she's going to get the fight that she wants because Amanda Nunes is going to be the aggressor. Holm does like to fight off the back foot and counter strike. So Holm is essentially going to get the fight that she wants. But man, I just feel that while she's counter striking, Amanda Nunes is going to get some early reads. I think she's going to be able to close distance. I think she's going to be able to get inside, clinch up with her, throw some elbows, some knees. She could also potentially try and trip her to the mat. And I think if it goes to the mat, I would absolutely favour Amanda Nunes to submit Holm, because the difference in quality in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu between the two women is just astronomical. I know Holm's only been submitted once. She's never been knocked out. But I'm thinking either or here. I feel that if it stays on the feet, Amanda Nunes, if she starts teeing off on her, I do think that Holly Holm is going to start feeling it. Depending on how much of an onslaught that she puts on, it depends on how I think that Holm copes. I think if she's really putting it on a one round with time to work as well, and Holmes tried to sort of exit out of there and she can't, she keeps on getting teed, and I could see her sort of cradling a little bit, turtling up, and allowing Amanda Nunes to finish her. And if, like I say, if it goes to the mat, if Nunes trips her, or listen, Holm throws a lot of kicks. Some can be quite lazy. If Nunes catches one of the kicks and takes her to the mat that way, that's a route and an avenue to the mat for Amanda Nunes. Like I say, where I think that she's going to have a huge advantage over her. For me, I can see at some point the fight going to the mat, and if that's the case, I do think Amanda Nunes will submit her. But like I say, I can also see the fight staying stood up, Nunes cutting angles and really putting it on her against the cage, and Holm, like I've just mentioned, turtling up and getting out of there. So I'm struggling for a method of victory. Ultimately, I'm going to take a submission, and the reason I'm going to take a submission is, like I say, the fight could hit the mat, but also Amanda Nunes could drop Holly Holm as well and then jump on her and grab a submission, similar to what she did against Miesha Tate. So for that reason, I'm going to take Amanda Nunes, and I'm going to take her to win via submission. And in the final Showtime fight of the podcast, a really, really interesting one. I'm really looking forward to breaking this one down. We've got Jan Blachowicz fighting the 205 debuting Luke Rockhold. John, interesting fight. Who have you got?
Yeah, definitely interesting fight. You can say that again. I'm really, really intrigued to see what kind of Luke Rockhold we're going to see, what he's going to be like at his new weight class of 205. I think it's a great decision for him. He's a big guy for 185 pounds. I think he's too big for middleweight. He's about 6'3". His frame, when you look at his frame, he has got the perfect frame for a 205, and I do think it's the right decision to make at this stage of his career. The big question is, of course, whether the damage has already been done, because I think cutting down to 185 pounds has really cost him in the chin wise, in the chin department, and with his longevity, because when you look at his last fight, I know it was coming up to about 18 months ago now, that loss to Yoel Romero, but man, that was absolutely brutal, that knockout. I mean, he was pretty much out cold in a seated position against the cage when Yoel Romero just brazenly walked up to him and clobbered him with just everything he had, and you could just tell he was just all over the place. And obviously we've seen him before as well get finished with strikes via Michael Bisping. Obviously we all know good old left hook Larry. He's not known for his particular one punch knockout power at all, or really his knockout power is more of a volume guy. So I think that cutting down to 185 for Rockhold, it really cost him, and I'd be interested to see whether that's something permanent. I mean, whether that chin depletion is permanent, or whether the move up to 205 will help him out, and whether those problems will be put to one side and into the past. But going up against Blachowicz, I think he's a good first opponent to have. And I mean, I know Blachowicz is a beast. He's been on a good tear up until he met Thiago Santos. But for me, Blachowicz isn't the kind of guy that will. He's not particularly known for his knockout power. I mean, you go in a long, long way back before for his last finish via strikes. That was Ilir Latifi back in 2014. He doesn't really throw with much volume, so you don't really have to worry about, similar to like a Thiago Santos that we've already spoke about, like a bull rush or a flurry kind of guy. So I think it's a good kind of fight stylistically, and in a sense of testing that chin out at 205, because, as I said, I don't think Blachowicz is the kind of guy that you'll go up against and he'll knock you out cold with one shot, or he'll rush you and flurry you up against the fence and knock you down and then finish you. He's more of a meticulous, slow and steady work behind a nice crisp jab. He's got very nice body kicks. I forgot before until I watched the Thiago Santos fight back, he threw in some nice body kicks in there, and leg kicks as well. He's trading leg kicks with Santos in that fight. So he does work well behind those techniques. Obviously, he's got decent wrestling as well. We saw that in the Nikita Krylov fight. Took Nikita Krylov down and worked into a nice arm triangle choke and locked that on and finished him in the second round. So he's a dangerous guy, but he's not a guy that I really worry about knocking Luke Rockhold out. If Rockhold was going up against someone else like an Anthony Smith or Thiago Santos or that kind of guy at 205 or Rakic, someone like that, I'd be a bit more worried for Luke Rockhold. But I think this is a good first match for him, first matchup for him at this weight class, and I do think he's going to get the win. I think it's going to go to a decision, but I think Luke Rockhold is going to be able to utilise his kicks. I know I've just spoke about Blachowicz's kicks, but I think Luke Rockhold has better kicks. I mean, he throws in that question mark kick beautifully. He's got really nice body kicks, and he's a very good striker. He's very well rounded, training obviously at AKA previously. He's picked up a lot of skills wrestling wise from there, and I do think he'll be able to out volume and outstrike Blachowicz for the 3 rounds. And I do think we're going to see Luke Rockhold back in the win column after obviously suffering that brutal knockout in his last fight. As I say, I think this is a good stylistic fight for him. I don't think Blachowicz will be able to test that chin, test whether it is depleted, test whether his chin's gone, and all that cutting down to 185 and the brutal knockout losses have done any long-term damage. I don't think Blachowicz is that guy to test him out, and I think we're going to see a new Luke Rockhold. I think we're going to see Luke Rockhold 2.0 at light heavyweight, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does over the next few fights as well. But yeah, I'm going with Luke Rockhold to win this fight, and I think he's going to win a decision.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I just want to say that I'm so happy for Rockhold that he's made a move up to 205, because, like you've already mentioned, the cut down to 185 at middleweight was ridiculous, and credit to him, you know, he made weight when he needed to and stayed professional from that aspect. But the amount of times where you've seen an interview, you know, 2 or 3 minutes after he's weighed in and the dude can barely talk and his face is so sunken in, and you just, you know, it's not good for your body. And ultimately, the proof was in the pudding, because his chin was an absolute wreck, and at the end of it, we all said and done at middleweight at 185. And that's the next point that I want to talk about, because for me, this is the big issue in the fight. You know, I was about to say is and ask the question. I can guarantee when a fighter moves up in weight that's had a tough weight cut like Luke Rockhold, and there's been others as well, that the chin will improve. That's not an opinion, that's fact, it's science. When your body's more hydrated and it's less dehydrated, your durability will absolutely increase. So that's the fact. But the issue with Rockhold, the potential question mark, the red flag is, has that damage already been done previously? Has that damage been so much previously that even a move up to 205 won't drastically improve his chin enough for him to not get absolutely smoked again? And that is the big question. You know, the Bisping knockout wasn't great, but, you know, if that was his last knockout in his career up until this point right now, I probably won't be raising too many question marks on his chin for this fight. The problem lies with the Yoel Romero fight, because that knockout was fucking horrendous. It was one of the worst knockouts, the most brutal knockout that I've ever seen. And even as an MMA fan, it's quite rough to watch. So I just feel that it's that fight where that could have absolutely changed someone's life and changed someone's career, and that could be the case for Luke Rockhold. But like I say, it's a question mark, because every fighter does get knocked out, and well, most fighters get knocked out, and some can be quite brutal, and they can come back and never show signs of it. So there's that side to it as well. Now, for me, with this fight, initially I was on Blachowicz when the fight got announced. I was like, oh, holy shit, this is a bad move. Well, a bad first fight at 205 for Rockhold, with Blachowicz, who is a brute Polish warrior, tough. He was on a great winning streak as of late, until he got knocked out by Maheta in his last fight. But I thought that it was quite a horrible matchup, and I also thought, Blachowicz is the real 205er. He is going to be bigger in there. He is going to be stronger. He could impose that and try and get Rockhold down to the mat. But actually, when I looked a little deeper into it, and I went style versus style, and also had a look at some of the theory stuff behind the fight as well, which I'll touch upon in just a minute. I'm actually edging towards Rockhold in this fight, and edging to a point where I'm starting to be pretty confident that Rockhold's going to win this fight. And what I mean, and what I meant by the theory side of it, and again, John, you touched upon it a little bit as well. I don't fear the knockout of Blachowicz in this fight. Now, yes, it's at light heavyweight. Light heavyweights have the higher percentage of early finishes. I believe the stat is, it could be finishes in general, but fights tend to end pretty quickly in the light heavyweight division compared to all others. The big dudes, they're going to be thrown with heat, 4-ounce gloves, all that. So, of course, there's that chance of a knockout. But with Blachowicz, he hasn't knocked anybody out with punches since 2010, which is 9 years ago. That's also 17 fights ago. So he hasn't knocked anybody out with punches in 17 fights. And actually, the only TKO he's got was the TKO on Latifi in that time as well. But that was a kick to the body, followed up by strikes. It was a body shot that crumbled him. So when you're looking at the shots with the hands to the jaw, Blachowicz hasn't done it for 9 years, man, and it's almost tough to really factor that in so much into the breakdown, because he's not the killer that people think he is. Yes, he's a good fighter. Yes, he's got good qualities, but 17 fights and you've not touched anybody's jaw and knocked him out at light heavyweight. The story says more than words for sure. But because of that, I think that Luke Rockhold's chin will hold up in this fight. I think from a style perspective, this fight absolutely favours Rockhold. Rockhold's a southpaw fighter that likes to kick. Blachowicz is an orthodox, conventional striker that likes to close the distance and get into the pocket. So Rockhold, that kick is going to be there to the open body of Blachowicz. That's a weapon and a tool to use to try and keep somebody that's closing the distance from closing the distance. The kicks, like I've just mentioned, the kicks are going to be there. I feel that Rockhold will manage distance well. He's going to be healthier in there. He's going to be fitter. I think his cardio is going to be good. And if Blachowicz does try and impose, his strength, his frame, his build, and really try and show Rockhold who the real 205er is, clinches up, closes distance, clinches up against the cage with Rockhold. Rockhold's got some really sick trips as well, man, where he can get on top. On top, there's not many better in mixed martial arts on the planet than Rockhold in top position. Great grappling, great transitions, great ground and pound. He's got submissions as well. He's a real dominant force on top. And like I say, he's going to have much more muscle and power at 205 when he's on top. I genuinely think Blachowicz will feel it. So, yes, we've got the small issues of the chin, but I don't think it's so much of a worry with Blachowicz. And like I've said, his record and, the fact he's gone 17 fights without knocking anybody out. And then you've got the stylistic edge, which I think favours Rockhold absolutely. I favour Rockhold to win this fight as well, man. I wouldn't be surprised if he did put Blachowicz away, but Blachowicz is Polish. We all know that the Polish are warriors and machines, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt of that in this fight, and I think that Rockhold does get takedowns in this fight. I think he does try to get Blachowicz out of there. I think Blachowicz's toughness will hold out, prevail. I think Rockhold will take the decision. So I've got Luke Rockhold to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. And now we move on to the parlay piece. And the first parlay piece of the card is Michael Chiesa. Now, Michael Chiesa's coming back after the win against Condit at his welterweight debut. And now he's fighting Diego Sanchez, who, unfortunately is the ghost of Diego Sanchez. Sanchez has had a great career. He's a fan favourite. We all know him. We all love him. He's crazy. He's got that mean face. He'll go into a cage. He'll throw down with anybody. He's not scared to get hit. But the problem is a career of that, and you're suddenly going to have problems at the end of your career, which is exactly where we are sitting now with Diego Sanchez. And I know he's on a 2-fight win streak. People will be like, oh, well, how can he be declining that much, and how can he show durability issues because he's on a 2-fight win streak? But listen, the last 2 fighters that he fought are not at the level of Michael Chiesa. And his last fight, Mickey Gall, he could take advantage of the fact that Mickey Gall isn't the strongest on bottom, so he could take him down. If he had chin issues, if he got hit on the chin, he didn't like it, he can always fall back on that plan B and take the fight to the mat and control the fight in top position. It keeps him out of danger. It keeps him out of the way of getting knocked out on the feet. And in fact, Gall did hit him a couple of times, and Gall isn't known as a knockout artist. But there was a couple of moments where Diego Sanchez didn't like getting hit by Mickey Gall and opted to take him to the ground. The fight before that, Craig White, that was, I don't mean to sound too harsh, but that was a pretty pathetic performance, But again, Craig White hit him a couple of times and he didn't like taking the shots, but he could fall back on his wrestling, he could take him down, he could control on top, win rounds, get some strikes off, and ultimately look quite decent. But this is the problem where he's coming in against Chiesa. Chiesa's a better striker. I mean, he's not known as a striker. Chiesa, first and foremost, he is more of a grappler, submission artist, but he is a better striker than Mickey Gall. He is a better striker than Craig White. So I do feel from a technique perspective and the power that he's also gaining up at welterweight, and, his body's now filled out. And again, like we've just mentioned with Rockhold, he's not having that difficult cut anymore. I feel that he can get strikes off against Sanchez. He can land on him. He is really awkward and tough to get reads on inside the cage. Michael Chiesa is as well. So I do think Sanchez will be the aggressor, but I feel like he's going to be just following him around and just getting hit at range. But I think when Chiesa comes forward in the short bursts, I think he can catch Diego Sanchez. I think he can hurt Sanchez, potentially drop him as well. Get Sanchez in some sort of trouble anyway. But the big problem for Sanchez in this fight, unlike his last 2 fights, he cannot fall back on his wrestling in this fight because Chiesa is such a good grappler. So even if Diego Sanchez does manage to get him down, which personally I think if Sanchez tries to shoot in on a takedown, he'll get scrambled and reversed and Chiesa will put himself on top in the scramble. Or if he tries to pin Chiesa against the cage, I think Chiesa's going to be the stronger man in there. I think he would turn him and get trips and body locks of his own and put Sanchez on his back. I just feel like you can get the gist of what I'm getting at here. I just feel that wherever this fight goes, Sanchez is going to be in trouble. I don't think there's going to be anywhere in this fight where Sanchez can really flourish. He's not going to be able to. Well, maybe the pocket boxing. Pocket boxing might be the only option for him, but he's got a close distance to do that. Michael Chiesa is a tall, rangy guy that can use his reach and distance management. And if he does get close to Sanchez, Chiesa loves just darting forward that couple of inches and getting the body lock, and that's then close down the pocket boxing. So maybe that's Sanchez's only path to victory, but I just feel wherever the fight goes, whether it's on the feet, at distance, in the clinch, on the mat, whether Chiesa's on top or bottom. I just feel Sanchez is just going to be outmatched in this fight. Now, Diego Sanchez has got a very good record for submission defense. The dude's had 40 MMA fights and never been submitted. I'm going on record here. I think Chiesa is going to be the first to submit Diego Sanchez. So for that reason, the first parlay piece is Michael Chiesa, and I think he's going to submit Diego Sanchez. John, what's your thoughts?
It's a big call, man. Picking Sanchez to lose via submission, but yeah, you've covered a lot of the main talking points for this fight, especially. I especially want to echo the fact that I don't like this fight at all for Sanchez. I thought he should have hung up the gloves after the Matt Brown fight. Obviously, he's won his last 2 fights against Craig White and Mickey Gall. But for me, I think they're kind of pulling the wool over our eyes a bit, those victories. Craig White, no offense to Craig White, he's a great guy. He's a lovely dude, but his wrestling just wasn't at the standard of that you need to compete in the UFC, especially against a guy like Diego Sanchez, who will wrestle you all day long if he can. And then Mickey Gall as well. Mickey Gall obviously doesn't have a great bottom game. He did come out after that loss and say that he was he'd been really ill as well in the build up to the fight, and he had absolutely no energy going into the fight. Obviously, we don't know whether that's just an excuse, but either way, yeah, he did look extremely poor, and I think he made Sanchez look better than he actually is at this stage in his career. With that being said, Michael Chiesa, I think again he's similar to the Luke Rockhold discussion we just had. I think it's definitely a good decision that he's moved up in weight classes. Again, a guy with a big frame for the weight class. He's tall. He's got the height and reach advantage over Diego Sanchez. And for me, there's 2 paths to victory for Diego Sanchez in this fight. One was his heavy top game, which he's very good at. He's wrestling his heavy top game, which he's been known for throughout his career, but he can't do that against a guy like Chiesa because Chiesa's got good takedown defense and he's got a really good submission game off his back. He'll look for sweeps, and I think he'll get back to his feet. If he does get taken down, I think he'll get back to his feet quite comfortably. And secondly, what you said in the pocket boxing or just brawling, as I'm going to call it. I think if he just bites down on the gum shield and swings, and Chiesa agrees to take part in that game as well, there's every possibility he could land on Chiesa's chin and possibly knock him down and finish him. But even if that's the way that Sanchez is going to go, I'd pick Chiesa to win. I mean, Chiesa, though he dominated the majority of the fight against Condit on the mat, he did have moments on the feet as well where he was where he was catching Carlos Condit, who's a very, very good striker as well. So I think if the 2 of them do just exchange blows, I think it's going to end up similarly to the Ala Quinta and the Matt Brown fights, the Joe Lozon fights for Sanchez, and I think he's just going to get finished. And I've been toying all build up to this podcast over whether I think Michael Chiesa will finish Diego Sanchez, and I actually think he will, but I actually think he'll finish him via strikes. And again, you pointed out that Chiesa's not particularly well known for his striking or anything like that, but I could just see him catching him with landing something heavy, maybe landing a knee in a clinch or something like that, or maybe an elbow similar to Matt Brown, something like that just kind of puts the wobblers on Sanchez, and then I think he'll flurry and finish it. He could well jump for a submission, pull a guillotine, or jump on the back or something like that after he's rocked him. So you may well be right. He could get the submission that way, rather than the traditional take him down, work to an offensive position and submit him. I don't think we'll see that from him because Sanchez's submission defense is fantastic. But either way, yeah, we're both going the same route. We're both going with Michael Chiesa to win this fight, and we're both going for him to win via stoppage.
And the next parlay piece of the podcast is Arnold Allen. Now, Arnold Allen's fighting Gilbert Melendez, and man, I feel like this is a horrible fight for Gilbert Melendez. You know, similar to what we just said about Diego Sanchez. Gilbert Melendez is a 37-year-old featherweight. He's had a 2-year hiatus. He's on a 4-fight losing streak. He's won 1 fight in his last 6. That one, ironically, being Thiago Sanchez back in 2013. But that's the thing. His last win in the UFC was 6 years ago. You know, that's crazy. And Thiago Sanchez wasn't the Thiago Sanchez he is now, by the way. Back then, that fight was fucking phenomenal.
Wild.
Go and watch that fight if you want 15 minutes of enjoyment, because like I say, it was one of the most fun fights that you'll ever see. Now, you can use the argument for Melendez about his losses, you know, prime Ben Henderson, Anthony Pettis, Eddie Alvarez, Edson Barboza, Jeremy Stephens. But the fact of the matter is, he has been showing signs of aging and decline for a little while now, and I just don't think the 2 years off has helped him at all. And then, like I say, coming back after 2 years and being 37 in one of the lower weight categories, 37 is old for a featherweight. You know, it's not old for a heavyweight. They're in the prime at that point, but you know, it all varies depending on the weight class. But 37 is old for a featherweight. And then you're looking at Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen is 14-1. He's only lost to Marcin Rocek in 2014 in Cage Warriors. The dude's got a good record, and he's got a solid style to back it up as well. Predominantly a nice boxing style, crisp, clean movement, crisp, clean strikes, combinations, just being aware of distance and danger. And then his ground game as well. You know, he's got plenty of submissions. He submitted Mads Burnell. He's got submissions, Alan, Omar. The dude is just so well-rounded. But the thing is, he doesn't have many holes in his game. He doesn't make many mistakes. He's not a fighter that you can get out of there. He's tough. He's durable. And like I say, wherever the fighter, his opponent, wants to take the fight, if they're the one dictating it, Allen will accept any position and he'll go anywhere in the fight because he's comfortable everywhere. I just feel that how is Gilbert Melendez going to win this fight? Because I ultimately think the fight is going to go to a decision. I don't think Melendez can out-volume Allen. I think Allen's boxing's too good. I think his distance management's too good. I think if Melendez did come out and look good and really started to move well and he was fluid, I think Allen will just take a step back and he'll just pop a jab out and he'll just get some reads. He maybe start frustrating Melendez, but that's a big if we see that Melendez, because I don't think we do. I think we're going to see a declined Melendez. I think he's going to be a little bit slower. I think his punches aren't going to come in the combinations they used to. And I just feel that with the movement of Allen, I think he's going to have, like I say, the better movement. I think he's going to be quicker on the feet. And I think his shots are going to be definitely in more volume, but cleaner and crisper, a little bit harder. I think he's going to bust Melendez up. And I just, like, if Melendez decides to shoot in a takedown and take him to the mat, it's very difficult to keep Arnold Allen down. It's difficult to get him down as well. He does spring back up, but it's also a danger. You know, ask Mads Burnell how easy it is to take Arnold Allen down, because you can do it once, you can do it twice, you can do it 3 or 4 times, but you make one mistake and you'll get submitted by Allen in a choke. So again, similar to the Chiesa and Sanchez breakdown, I'm struggling to see where Gilbert Melendez wins this fight. He's had a fantastic career. I've been a big fan of his throughout his career as well. But like it seems to be the theme of the podcast, at some point becomes the time for a fighter. It's just the sad reality of MMA. I think Arnold Allen's got the edge on Melendez pretty much wherever the fight goes. But I do feel that Allen will coast opposed to being overly aggressive and try and get Melendez out of there. Melendez is fucking tough, man. You can't take that away from him. So for that reason, I'm taking Arnold Allen to win. I'm going to take him to win by decision. John, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Arnold Allen's going to win this fight against a veteran and a guy who's been around the sport for a long time, Gilbert Melendez. When you look at his last fights, I know he's lost 4 in a row and 5 of 6, but those losses, like you say, come to Ben Henderson, Anthony Pettis, Eddie Alvarez, Edson Barboza and Jeremy Stephens. I mean, they're all top-level guys, and I don't think Arnold Allen is on those guys' level yet. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, this could be one of those fights where we all look back and go, well, maybe it's just the fact that Gil has fought some absolute killers in his last few fights. But But no, I do think Arnold Allen's going to win this fight. I think it's going to be won on the feet. I think Arnold Allen, he's not a massive volume guy, but I think he's got crisp boxing and he uses it well. He times his shots well. He doesn't put himself in any kind of real danger. With his boxing, he won't overcommit to things. He won't, like you said, I don't think he'll rush for a finish against Melendez. He's more than happy to just kind of pick you apart. And that's what I think he'll do in this fight. I mean, if he's done his studying as well, he'll utilise some of those low kicks that Jeremy Stephens was using against Melendez. But one of the things that for me stands out as to why I think that Arnold Allen's going to win this fight is just I don't know where Melendez's motivation is anymore. Like you say, he's 37 years old. He's quite a decent age for a featherweight. He's lost 5 of his last 6. Where's his fighting career going now? I think he's quite successful outside of fighting as well. He makes good money outside of fighting with the things that he does. And I just think that a young, hungry up-and-comer like Arnold Allen, he's just going to be sharper. He's just going to be quicker, crisper, more focused. And I do think he's going to get this win now. The only path to victory I can see in this fight, for me, is if Gilbert Melendez utilises takedowns. I mean, Arnold Allen, we saw him get taken down 6 times against Mads Burnell, 4 times against Makwan Amirkhani, a couple of times against Alan Omer as well. Obviously, we've seen Melendez get involved in a lot of stand-up wars, a lot of back-and-forth exchanges. That one with Thiago Santos comes to mind. The Jeremy Stephens fight was obviously a war as well, played out on the feet. And he's not really known for landing a lot of takedowns. I mean, when you look back through his career, I mean, landed a takedown against Anthony Pettis, one against Sanchez, landed one against Benson Henderson. He did land 5 against Josh Thompson. So possibly if he comes out with that game plan, the game plan of I'm going to take this guy down. But as you mentioned, Mads Burnell eventually succumbed to that. I think it was a ninja choke, if I remember correctly, that he caught him in as he was going for the takedown against the fence. And he puts himself at risk of things like that if he goes for the takedowns. He may feel comfortable. I mean, like I say, he's a veteran. He's a black belt. He's been around the block many times. He may feel comfortable to put himself in those situations, and that's the approach he might take. And it could be a successful one. And that's my only way that I can see Melendez winning the fight is if he takes Arnold Allen down. Allen has got a good get-up game. Again, we saw that in Mads Burnell. Sometimes when guys get 6, 7, 8, 10 takedowns in a fight, yes, well done, you're getting the takedowns, but you're obviously not holding your opponent down for long enough if they're getting back up and you're having to take them down again. And Allen can get back to his feet, and we saw that. But yeah, that's the only path to victory for Gilbert Melendez for me. But yeah, I think Arnold Allen is going to be the better boxer in this fight. I think he's going to be able to avoid those takedowns. I think he's going to be sensible in his approach. I don't think it's going to be a wild slugfest or anything like that. I think it's going to be a very measured, quite a slow pace fight, I think. But yeah, I just think when they do exchange, I think Arnold Allen's going to be crisper, sharper, and I think he's going to run out with the decision. So yeah, I'm going with Arnold Allen to win this fight via unanimous decision.
And now it's time for the dogfight. The underdog of the night at UFC 239 is Jorge Masvidal. Now, John, this is one that you picked out and you wanted to discuss, so I'm going to give you the pleasure of jumping on this first. Jorge Masvidal versus Ben Askren. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a really exciting fight, a really interesting fight. I think a lot of people are hyped for this fight. There's a lot of people talking on social media about the return of Ben Askren. Obviously, there was a lot of hype surrounding him when he came into the UFC, and then could he have come into the promotion in more controversial circumstances than his win over Robbie Lawler? Obviously, he got that bulldog choke in the first round, which some say Robbie was out for a split second. Others say that he was just relaxing and getting his breathing measured and getting himself calm to defend the choke, and that argument will rage on. I think I saw a split second, the same split second that I think Herb Dean saw, where Robbie Lawler's arm went limp and he might have been out. He may have just come back round then. The choke may have adjusted slightly and he came back, got that blood flow back to the brain. But yeah, that's going off on a bit of a tangent. But for me, it's an exciting and intriguing fight, an intriguing matchup to make. Part of me is really excited to see it. Part of me is a bit disappointed we're not seeing Jorge Masvidal against my guy Rocky Edwards. Obviously, that storyline was perfectly set up after the Darren Till bout, with everything that happened backstage between the two of them. But yeah, for me, this is I'm doing things a bit differently with the underdog fight on this occasion, because I'm not actually going to pick the underdog to win. I think Ben Askren is going to win this fight. I think he's going to utilise his exceptional wrestling. And I think he's going to smother Jorge Masvidal. I think he's going to be able to take Masvidal down. I do think Masvidal will be able to get back to his feet. Masvidal has got decent bottom game. He's got a decent get-up game. He's no slouch on the ground by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I do think Ben Askren's going to be able to take Masvidal down. We saw Askren take Lawler down in their fight with that pressure, literally straight from the first bell. He came out pressuring for the takedown, working for the takedown, and he did eventually get it. Although he did get taken down and slammed on his head in the process. But yeah, the one thing we've seen about Askren is he can take a shot as well. Lawler landed some bombs. He was landing some heavy ground and pound, and Askren, although he was close to getting put away, he just kind of took it. He did survive the onslaught and eventually got his way, pressured against the cage, eventually worked his way into that choke and got the choke. But for me, I'm not sure how Jorge Masvidal wins this fight unless he can stuff every single Ben Askren takedown, because I think if Askren does take Masvidal down, I think he'll spend 2 minutes on top at least, possibly longer, working the ground and pound before Masvidal can get back to his feet. That could be enough to win the round. He only needs to do that 2 out of the 3 rounds to win a decision. Jorge Masvidal, although he brutally and spectacularly knocked out Darren Till in his last fight, he's not really a one-punch knockout guy. I know he has got a few first-round stoppages via strikes on his record. Cesar Vahea, with the last one prior to Darren Till. And then we've also got... I think we go back a few years as well to the fight against Jake Ellenberger. Jake Ellenberger at that point, 2016, was definitely on the decline. But yeah, I don't think Masvidal has got the one-punch knockout power to defeat Ben Askren. I think if Askren can take the heavy bomb from Lawler and then those follow-up ground and pound strikes, I think he's going to be able to withstand the shots from Masvidal. Maybe Masvidal, like I say, if the path for him to victory is obviously sprawling and avoiding those takedowns, and I think he could maybe win a decision. But I do think Askren is going to win this fight. I do think he's going to be able to spend enough time on top. But I think it's going to go to a decision, and this is what I'm picking this fight for the underdog fight. Firstly, there's no other underdogs on this card that I particularly like the looks of, that I think stand as good a chance as Jorge Masvidal does in this fight. But secondly, I think it could be a close fight. I think if Masvidal does stuff some takedowns, he will obviously be the better fighter standing up. Askren doesn't want anything to do with the stand-up of Jorge Masvidal. And if he could stuff all of Askren's takedowns, then I think there's only one winner in this fight. But yeah, I do think it's going to be one of those fights where Askren does land takedowns in each round, spends 2 or 3 minutes on top. Those other 2 or 3 minutes in the round, Masvidal lands some strikes. So for that reason, you never know which way the judges are gonna go. You never know which side they're going to go with, whether it's going to be the minute and a half, 2 minutes of good solid strikes, or whether it's the 3 minutes of ground and pound and smothering heavy top pressure. So that is why I think Masvidal is the best underdog to. If you're looking at an underdog on this card, I think Masvidal is the best underdog to go with, because I think it could be a close decision. And it could be one of those ones that go either way. But ultimately, I'm picking Ben Askren to win the fight. But yeah, if I was had a gun to my head and someone said to me, "Who's your underdog pick for this card?" It's Masvidal, and it's for those reasons I've just mentioned.
Yeah, the card's really tough to actually cap and bet on in general. Anyway, it's one of the toughest that I can remember of this year. Even the other chalkier cards like the Russia cards and stuff like that. I just feel that this is quite tough to bet on. And the other side of it is there isn't very many underdogs either that I do give a decent chance of winning. Like I've said, it's a weird card. I feel like the majority of the favourites are going to win the fight. It's just going to be one of those nights. But to pick an underdog in this card is difficult, and I'm going down the same lines as you as well, John. And it's also something similar I did a couple of weeks ago in your absence with Alessio Di Chirico against Kevin Holland. I picked Kevin Holland to win that fight. Di Chirico was the dog fight for that podcast, and lo and behold, it went to a very close decision. So it sort of made sense doing that, and it's similar to what I'm doing and what you've already done as well. So Jorge Masvidal plus 200, the comeback on Ben Askren's minus 235. But man, the line's off. The line's really, really off. Yes, I think Ben Askren's going to win. I think he's going to win a decision as well. He's going to score takedowns in this fight. He's going to close the distance. He is going to get a hold of Masvidal. But it's nothing that Masvidal, I think, hasn't seen before. Even when you look back to the Damian Maia fight, Maia tried blanking at him every possible chance. He was getting a hold of him. He was shooting from far out, missing, but then grabbing a hold of an ankle and then snaking the back from it and just doing everything he could to get Masvidal on the mat. And credit to Masvidal, he spent a lot of time with Maia as a backpack, and he did not get submitted in that fight, and instead managed to get to his feet at times and managed to get some good strikes off Maia, to the point where it went to a very close, razor-sharp decision. I don't think anybody was really confident which way it was going to go. And again, I see similar things in this fight. I think Askren is going to get Masvidal down, but I don't think he's going to be able to control him for long periods. Masvidal can get back up to his feet. He's worked a lot on his wrestling over his career. ATT, known for having some great wrestlers there. He was, best friends with Colby Covington, who I don't think he's spent a lot of time around in this camp, but he's spent a lot of time with Colby over the years. So obviously Colby's wrestling's rubbed off on Masvidal, and Masvidal can wrestle to a very good standard. So not to Askren's standard. Askren's a beast when it comes to wrestling, but I think he's good enough to get a knee down in a scramble and pop back up to his feet and make Askren take him down and down and down. And that's going to wear more on Askren, I feel, than it is on Masvidal if he does have to keep on taking him down. And it's also going to be frustrating as well. On the feet, though, it's not even close. The skill, the quality and the power of Masvidal is absolutely head and shoulders over anything that Askren can deliver on the feet. It is very much a striker versus grappler fight. And like I say, I think it's going to go very similar to how the Maia fight went, minus the backpacking. I think Askren is going to get numerous takedowns in this fight. Every time Masvidal pops up, that's going to be a dangerous spot because he's going to land strikes before Askren closes the distance again. The problem is, I saw Askren get bombed on by Lawler, and Lawler was throwing some big old bombs on Askren's chin, and Askren didn't get knocked out. And I definitely feel that Lawler packs more of a punch than what Masvidal does. Don't think there's a lot in it, but I do think that a big bomb on Lawler will probably hurt more than a big bomb from Masvidal. So I feel that if Askren's chin's held up with some nasty shots from Lawler, he could probably hold up from Masvidal, so it would mean Masvidal would have to outscore him. And again, if there's sort of 4, 5 or 6 takedowns over 3 rounds, I do feel that at least 2 of those rounds will go to Askren, but it's going to be close. And I'm telling you that there's a big skill gap on the feet as well. So if Masvidal does put it on Askren every time Askren tries to close the distance and take him down, and he does really start hurting him, that absolutely wouldn't surprise me either. But the one thing I'm absolutely sure of in this fight is Masvidal should not be a plus 200 underdog in this fight. So for that reason, he is the dog fight of the UFC 239 podcast, but my official pick is Ben Askren to win via decision. And with the breakdowns complete, we now enter the quick fire round. And first up in the quick fire round is a fight that actually only got made today. We've got Marlon Vera against a newcomer, Nohelin Hernandez. John, who have you got?
Fight only made today. Obviously Hernandez comes in at short notice. I did read the other day that he was another guy who was meant to be stepping in, but his original promotion wouldn't release him from his contract to obviously fulfill his probably his dream of fighting in the UFC, which was a bit harsh. But yeah, we've got Hernandez in there against Marlon Vera. I'm glad that Vera's got an opponent. I'll be honest, because it's such short notice, I haven't. I've hardly seen anything of Nohelin Hernandez. Looking at his record, his last, I think, 6 victories have all come by decision. I mean, he has fought on some good promotions, which is obviously one of the things we always talk about with guys coming into the UFC short notice, LFA, Bellator, things like that. But I don't think this guy's he's going to offer anything that Marlon Vera hasn't seen. I'm very high on Marlon Vera. We all know that. I was actually going to pick Marlon Vera to defeat Sean O'Malley if that fight would have gone ahead. I'm a big fan of Vera. I think he can win it everywhere. I love the way he mixes up to the body, use knees, elbows, got good submissions. I think Marlon Vera is going to be the better fighter all around, and I think Marlon Vera is going to win this fight. I think he's going to win via submission.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really close fight, man. And yes, it's short notice for Hernandez, but Hernandez actually had a fight scheduled for later this month, a championship fight in LFA against Anthony Burchak. So it's not as if he hasn't been in camp and he's fresh off the sofa. He would have been in camp, he would have been training. And, looking at his record quickly before I talk about styles, he recently had a loss in a boxing bout, so he's obviously trying to work his hands, getting his hands better. And he also owns a first round finish of Martin Day, who is a current UFC fighter as well. That was back in 2017, so a couple of years ago. It was only a couple of fights into Hernandez's career, so that's quite impressive. But the dude's good everywhere. Hernandez, he can crack on the feet, he's got knockout power, he's got combinations, and he's also got a good top game as well. I just think that it's a little bit too much to ask for Chito Vera. I don't think this is going to be a one-sided fight whatsoever. I definitely think both fighters are going to be absolutely competitive, but I just see the veteran experience of Vera kicking in at some point. I think if Vera can get a trip and take him down to the mat, it can, show him what's what when you get to the UFC on the mat. And I just feel that on the feet, Vera is a little bit more elusive, uses his kicks a little bit better. Ultimately, the problem Vera's always had is he's a late starter, he always falls behind early on. So he really does need to fix that. But like I say, I know this is an Hernandez that's not off the couch. I know he was preparing for a 5-round championship fight against Burchak in a good promotion in LFA. So you would imagine that he's at least half ready for this fight. 'Cause, the fight was in a couple of weeks, so it wasn't a full camp. But man, I don't think it's going to be a one-sided fight, but I am going to take Marlon Vera to win, and I'm also going to take him to win via submission. And in the next quick-fire fight, we've got Claudia Gadelha against Randa Markos. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I think stylistically this is a bad matchup for Randa Markos. I think it's good for Claudia Gadelha. Markos, as we know, likes that heavy pressuring style, that wrestle heavy, push you against the fence and try and grind a decision out of you. Obviously, last fight she won via armbar over Angela Hill. That was her first finish for a long time. I think it would be her first finish in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, as well. But yeah, Gadelha, I do think she's starting to decline slightly from the Gadelha we saw a few years ago. Obviously go to war with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, but I do still think she's got the skills to be able to defeat Randa Markos. I think she'll be able to counter Randa Markos' heavy wrestling style. She's a good wrestler herself, good on the mat, and I think standing she's the better of the two fighters. So I don't really see a path to victory for Markos in this fight, because obviously usually it's that heavy pressure style, but I just don't think she'll be able to utilise that in this fight against Gadelha. So I'm going with Claudia Gadelha to win this fight. I think she's going to win a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think the UFC are throwing Gadelha a bit of a bone in this fight, because Gadelha is declining. Again, I think that's quite noticeable. and she's struggling with cardio specifically. So against Ansaroff in her last fight, she started well, as she does, but because Ansaroff was able to defend a couple of takedowns sort of midway through the fight and really express her striking, it made Gadelha work harder than what she will have initially wanted to do, and that is then draining a tank, and that's the problem now. Markos will make her work, but the thing is, Markos has got quite a similar style to Gadelha, except it's just nowhere near at that level. So although Gadelha is declining, I think from some physical aspects, again, like a cardio, I don't think she's declining from any sort of skills. So I actually think she's the better. I actually think Gadelha is the better striker than Markos. Should it stay on the feet, I think she's a little more crisper. I think her boxing's that little bit tighter, and when they engage in close distance and they clinch up, I feel Gadelha will be potentially a little bit stronger, but she'll be more savvier with her takedowns. You know, she'll look for trips, and she'll just use that veteran experience, I think, to completely nullify Markos's game plan. And when Markos is on her back and Gadelha is on top, I just feel that it's going to be Gadelha's world. I think Markos will struggle to do much from her back. I also think it's going to be another one of those fights where first round is dominant for Gadelha, second round is closer, but Gadelha wins it. But then I think a cardio is going to be suspect again. I think Markos may take the third round. But yeah, I've got Claudia Gadelha to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. Now in the next quick fire fight, we've got Alejandro Turbo Perez against Song Yadong. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I think this fight's going to be a really good fight, and I think it's going to be a really tough test for Song Yadong as well. I think obviously his last fight against Vince Morales, it's the first time he's gone to decision in the UFC, having got 2 finishes prior to that. And he's going up against a really tough guy in Perez, who had a good back and forth battle with Cody Stamann in his last fight. I liked how Perez was mixing things up in that fight, switching stances. He was throwing in takedowns as well against Stamann, who's got very good takedowns himself. I mean, he landed that big high crotch that Daniel Cormier is famous for, which is tough to do against a guy like Cody Stamann, like I say, who's got good wrestling himself. But yeah, I'll go with Song Yadong to win this fight, just purely because of the speed that he possesses. I mean, he's really quick. His right hand is always loaded like a spring, and that back right leg, I mean, he's just ready to really push off and fire those shots at you whenever you come into range and things like that. And I do think that the speed will be the difference in this fight. I think Perez will be in his face. I think he'll be pressuring him, and I do think it could be a tough fight. I think it's going to be another fight that goes to a decision. But I do think Song Yadong is going to be the quicker fighter. I think he's going to be able to get his shots off and be able to land 2 or 3 shots before while Perez only lands 1. And then for that reason, I think that the judges will side in Yadong's favour and give him the decision victory.
Yeah, I think the speed definitely lies with Song as well. With his striking, the speed and his combinations and his punches are really unrivaled, and it's going to be a problem for a lot of fighters to deal with that. But ultimately, they're going to have to find a way to deal with that. Now, the thing is with Song Yadong as well is he normally relies on his wrestling as well. He mixes things up. So yes, he's got good hands, but when fights are close, like you look at his last fight with Martin Day, the fight was close on the hands, and yeah, I feel like it was sealed with a takedown and some top control. But this is the problem in this fight for Song Yadong, because Alejandro Perez has seriously got some of the best takedown defense I've ever seen. Like, he's almost godlike. Look, ask Stamann. Stamann tried to take the guy down numerous times. He had his hands locked under his butt numerous times, and I swear you just can't take the dude down. And if you do get him down, he's got a spring. He'll pop straight back up. So I feel that in the camp that he's in AKA, and how good his defensive wrestling is, you can only make the educated assumption that his offensive wrestling is also that good. And I feel if he's getting beaten to the punch with Song Yadong, I feel like he's going to have a wrestling game plan, sort of, even if it's not a plan A, just a plan B, test, because he's got good boxing as well, so test Song Yadong out if he is getting beat to the punches, and if he is taking 2 or 3 for every one that he's giving, then I feel that he's gonna go to the mat, man. He's got a bunch of good wrestlers around him in camp, and again, I think it's another fight where the line's completely and utterly off. This is a big step up for Song Yadong. You look at his previous competition, none of them are anywhere at the level of Alejandro Perez. And Alejandro Perez has got sneaky ways of winning fights, man. Like, look at that Eddie Wineland fight. I'm not sure how he convinced the judges to score that for him, but they all did. And yeah, I actually think this is going to be an upset on the card. I think Perez is going to win the fight. I think he's going to use wrestling if his boxing can't match. And I just feel he's got more paths to victory. So I'm going to take Alejandro Perez to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the next quick fire fight, we've got Edmen Shahbazyan versus Jack Marshman. John, who have you got?
Yeah, Edmen Shahbazyan is a guy I'm really looking forward to seeing again. He's only very young. I think he's 21 years of age, one of the youngest guys on the roster. And so far, I mean, he's had a fantastic start to his UFC career. He's got that victory against Darren Stewart via split decision, the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale. And then obviously in his last fight, he landed those Travis Brown elbows on Charles Byrd to get the win after 38 seconds in the first round. And he's going up against a tough guy in Jack Marshman, but a guy who I think was a little bit lucky to avoid his third straight defeat in his last outing against John Phillips. I know a lot of people were saying that Phillips won that fight with his forward pressure alone. For me, the path to victory in this fight, Jack Marshman, obviously, he's got a good, solid boxing. He utilised it well off the back foot. We saw that against John Phillips as well. He avoided a lot of John Phillips' heavy shots and boxed well on the outside. Shahbazyan mixes in takedowns fantastically. I think he took down Stewart down 6 or 7 times in their fight. And then, as we saw in the Charles Byrd fight, he's dangerous as well if people try to shoot on him, and he can land elbows and finish you that way after 38 seconds. I mean, this guy's dangerous all round, but I'm going with Shahbazyan to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to take Jack Marshman down. He could withstand the power of Darren Stewart, and if he can withstand that power, I think he can withstand the power of Jack Marshman's strikes. The only way I think Marshman will win is if he's able to stuff all the takedowns and outbox Shahbazyan, but I don't think that is going to happen. Therefore, I think Shahbazyan is going to get the victory. Marshman's a tough guy. I'm not sure whether he'll get finished. Possibly he gets finished via submission. But I'm going to go with Shahbazyan to win via decision.
Yeah, Jack Marshman's a fighter that I like a lot. He's always put on some entertaining fights and never really disappointed, to be honest. He's always been in an entertaining fight. But again, the theme of the podcast is this decline, man, and I feel like Marshman's on a decline as well. Edmen Shahbazyan for me, is not the fight that Marshman should have taken, because this kid is a young, hungry, developing kid that looks good everywhere. He's wild on the feet, he's got power, he's got accuracy, and he's also got a really good wrestling game and a top game to go with that as well. So I feel Shahbazyan absolutely beats Marshman wherever this fight goes. I do think he can catch Marshman. I do think he can drop Marshman, and at that point, I don't think he'll let him off the hook like what John Phillips did. I think Shahbazyan will be all over him, and I think he'll get him out of there. So I'm going to take Edmen Shahbazyan to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the next quick fire fight, we've got the returning Ismail Naurdiev versus Chance Rencountre. John, who have you got?
Yeah, Naurdiev for me had one of the best debuts you're going to see in the UFC when he took on Brazeres. He was absolutely fantastic. I picked Brazeres to win that fight. I think a lot of people did, but Naurdiev really showed that he deserves to be in the UFC and he deserves to be up amongst the good guys in the division as well. I mean, again, at only 22 years of age, this guy's really exciting to see what his future holds. The things we saw in the Brazeres fight, got good kicks, dangerous striking. His takedown defense was fantastic. When he did get taken down by Brazeres, who's Dan Hardy described him as having like a house on top of you when he has top control, Naurdiev was sweeping him and taking top control off him and reversing the positions fantastically. So I think this guy's one to really watch out for in the future. I think the Austrian Wonder Boy is definitely going to be a top 10 fighter at some point in his career. Going up against Chance Rencountre, who obviously got his first victory in the UFC in his last outing against Carl Stewart. He got dominated really in his debut against Bilal Muhammad. I think that was a step too far too soon. Coming in, I can't quite remember if that was a late notice fight against Bully B, but yeah, Muhammad outstruck him, took him down several times and held him down. But then coming up against Carl Stewart, he showed good persistence with the takedowns, good back control. I mean, he had Carl Stewart's back for a long time. Stewart was trying to wriggle out of there, but Rencountre controlled him very well and eventually locked on the rear naked choke. I think that's where he'll want to try and take this fight to the ground, but I think Naurdiev is a better fighter there. I think Naurdiev will be able to get top control and sweep if Rencountre does land the takedowns. One thing we saw with Naurdiev is he did tire slightly in the Prazeres fight. Prazeres hasn't got a great gas tank himself, so if he goes up against someone with a good gas tank, will he struggle? I don't know, because it was a short notice fight. Maybe that's the only reason why Naurdiev was tiring in round 2 and round 3 of that fight. But yeah, I can only see one winner of this fight, and I think it's going to be Ismail Naurdiev. He's, like I say, he's a dangerous guy. He just throws a few crazy techniques when he's standing. He's very good on the ground. I think he's got some Chechen heritage, so although he's from Austria, so we shouldn't be surprised that he's a beast on the ground. But yeah, I think Ismail Naurdiev is going to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to be better than Rencountre in pretty much all aspects of the fight. And at some point, I do think he's going to be able to get the fight to the ground. I think he's going to be able to land some ground and pound, and which we saw against Prazeres, who's close to catching the referee's attention with the ground and pound a few times in the Prazeres fight. And I think he'll this one's going to play out similarly. I think Ismail Naurdiev is going to win this fight via stoppage.
Yeah, the Austrian Wonderboy, man. I genuinely think it was the best debut of all time, man, because Prazeres was a beast, and you know, well, he is a beast, and Austrian Wonderboy took out my my money train. I was one of many people that got caught with this shock. But yeah, man, I like Naurdiev. He showed a few holes in the tape that I watched before that Prazeres fight, but actually I went really specific in those holes, and ironically the fight went in the place of those holes, and Naurdiev absolutely overcame the difficulties that he's shown in previous fights. So the dude is not only fixing his holes, but he's developing. I think he's only 22. The future's bright for him because he's got good technique on the feet, he's got power, he's got good takedowns, he's got good wrestling, grappling. He's the whole package. He's got experience as well for a 22-year-old. His record isn't, you know, the typical sort of like 6-0, 7-1, you know, sort of entry level into the UFC. He's got a good record with a lot of fights under his belt. Chance Rencountre is a fighter that I don't think, no disrespect, but I don't think we're going to be seeing him too much longer in the UFC. And again, I never mean to wish a man to lose his job, and I'm not in this case, but I do feel that he's going to rack up a couple of losses in a row, and the UFC are going to ultimately cut him, and I think this is going to be one of those losses. I don't see where he beats Naurdiev. Prazeres beats Rencountre everywhere in every aspect of MMA, and Naurdiev, you know, matched and more against Prazeres. So I don't know. I don't see Rencountre taking him down, controlling, taking him back and submitting him like he did in his last fight. I also don't see Rencountre standing on the feet and, you know, out voluming Naurdiev or putting a powerful shot on his jaw and knocking him out. I just don't see it. And I ultimately think, John, the fight's going to end exactly how you said. I think it's going to hit the mat at some point with Naurdiev on top. I think Rencountre's going to be a bit lackluster on bottom and sort of accept position opposed to trying to really sweep or throw up a submission or stand up or scoot to the cage or whatever. And I just think Naurdiev's going to have time to posture and let his strikes go. So I think he's going to win via ground and pound. I'm taking Ismail Naurdiev to win. I'm taking him to win via knockout. And in the final quick fire fight, again a short notice fight, we've got Julia Vila versus Pani Kianzad. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting fight. Julia Villa, if you've watched any of her fights, I mean, especially her last fight against Alexa Connors, man, she was absolutely wild in that fight. And she fights, when I say she fights in flurries, I mean, she really fights in flurries. In that fight, she would have moments of inactivity and then wait for Connors to throw something or even Shape to throw something, and then she'd literally throw everything in the kitchen sink at Connors, and then if it didn't get her out of there, it kind of they'd step back to the middle. The same kind of thing would happen. But she also, including in those strikes, she was not afraid to press her opponent up against the fence and dirty box and land some knees, elbows, and keep it grinding. Then flurry again, and eventually she got the finish with the front kick and follow up strikes. But yeah, she was landing when. I can't emphasize enough when I say she was landing flurries. I don't mean 4 or 5 shots. I mean she was showing like 20, 25 shots in those flurries, and then kind of stepping back when she realised I'm not putting her away. With this flurry, we'll just move back to the centre, restart, and do it again. And I'm really looking forward to seeing her actually, because she's got a bit of a wild, aggressive style, and she's going up against Chiesa, who obviously lost in the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale against Chiesa, and then she went and fought outside of the UFC, got a decision win, and she comes back to the UFC again in for this fight. But I also think it's going to be another loss for her. I think we saw in that fight against Chiesa, we saw that she can be pressed against the fence and held there, and Vera, from what I've seen of her, she likes to utilise that. She likes to utilise the dirty boxing, the grinding, the clinching, as well as those flurries. And then even if she doesn't use them and it stays standing, I think just the fact that she does throw so many punches, so much volume, unless you can finish her, I think it just looks really good in the judges' eyes. And I think he just looks like you're constantly winning the fight if you're throwing 20, 30 strikes that your opponent, obviously they can block a few, miss a few, but some land, and it probably looks like more are landing than actually are when you're throwing so many strikes in one combination. And so for that reason, I think Julia Vera is going to win this fight. I think she's going to win a decision.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think for those that haven't seen any of these women fight, I think they're both quite similar. Like you've just mentioned, John, they both flurry and, short punches, in sort of quick succession. Not really a lot behind them in regards to power and technique, unfortunately. I just feel like we're going to see 2 women inside the cage trying to slug it out. Ultimately, one's going to be more dominant. They both like to be dominant in the fights. They both like to get the fights up to the cage and unload shots on the cage, but they clearly both can't do that for the majority of the fight. Only one of them can. And ultimately, in situations like this, I'm going to favour the fighter that isn't coming in on less than a week's notice. So I'm going to take Julia Avila to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just the same as always, man. Check out the Newsome MMA website, YouTube channel, some great stuff out there. I've been pretty quiet actually myself over the last few weeks. Obviously, I had a holiday a couple of weeks ago. I'm busy with work, but yeah, the guys in the team are always putting out great content. Hopefully, got a few things I'm working on in the background as well to a couple of good interviews to get out to you guys soon in the near future. And then, as always, man, just hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me if you want to talk things MMA. I'm always down to chat. So make sure you hit me up at MMA and me.
Awesome. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website. Don't forget to visit the outlet's website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos, fighter interviews, and the content collaboration with Heavy Duty Fight Management too. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. The next mention is for MMA Play 365, which I spoke about at the start of this podcast. MMA Play 365 is a brand new betting advice platform that is now launched, and we believe that it's going to be a very popular platform with the content that we'll be offering for any type of gambler. So whether you're in it for the long term or whether you just want some fun bets whilst watching the fights on the night, the goal is to make money, and that's absolutely what we're going to be doing for you. So follow MMA Play 365 over on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. or visit MMAplay365.com to subscribe today. And the final mention is for the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too. And at CBD Life UK, they've got a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to also get 15% off your order. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.